Hello everyone, Mahendra, are you there? Great.
I'm
I
back.
think
I'm back.
people already have started joining, and we have 18 people so far joined here. And people are also started watching on YouTube live. There are 10 members in YouTube so far. They are watching. I'll just give a quick introductions about this webinar. I'm not going about talking about myself, but this particular webinar we will be talking about on the agile mindset, where Mahendra will be get us through understanding the different good part, bad part, myth, and anti-patterns on the agile mindset. This is the term that we have heard many times. One of the area that we want to mention, that I believe everyone, you have some questions that you may be asking. So we'll request in between, don't just start asking the question, raise your hand or put your question in the chat. We'll be having logical break after 10-15 minutes, and we'll answer your questions, and majority of the questions we'll be covering at the end of the sessions, where we do all the question answer. We'll try to answer the questions those are coming in between, those are relevant to the topics that we have covered so far. In case anyone have any issues, you can type on the chat. I myself, Niladri, I'll try to respond on the chat if it is not related to the questions on the topics. Over to you, Mahendra. You can start now by giving your introductions or some ideas.
Okay, thanks, Niladri. Um, thanks for the quick startup and the introduction of what the session is going to be all about. So, we 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 often get to hear a lot about this word agile mindset from the leaders who are responsible for the agile transformation. So they do always emphasize the fact that attaining agile mindset is the primary success factor for the agile implementation. But what exactly is this agile mindset? Have you ever asked them what do you mean by agile mindset? So what do you actually mean that when we should have an agile mindset? So, or is it something that I can take up a course on, take up a certification on, things like that? So I presume no, or at least I have not seen any certifications or courses which says agile mindset. So just hang on till the end. So I'll make an honest attempt to answer this very same question of what is this agile mindset is all about. Basically, how I'm tackling this is I will try to establish what is and what is not agile mindset, and the whole attempt of this conversation would be to give you some thought to start thinking on. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'll not take much time on this. So for logistical purpose, so I'll just switch off my video so that the bandwidth is conserved and we'll have better flow of bandwidth. Uh, I'm Mahendra Ote. So this is how I started my career way back in the 90s. So I started with the Indian Air Force. This is the uh, this is what we thought was all the computer was about, the big monitor that we had, and interested in programming way back in the college. The old timers who have joined in the call would probably recognize Basic, Fortran, and COBOL. These are the alien languages that we used to program in. Those are the days. And that was my first innings. My second innings was I rebooted my career as a Java J2E developer, PLSQL programmer, Unix scripting, and things like that. So in the 2000, and moved on to be a project lead, project manager, program manager. And then in around the 2010 timeframe, I got introduced to the agile ways of working. Then that is when I became a scrum master. So for people who are thinking that I've downgraded my career path by becoming from a program manager to a scrum master, so be it, but that was a wonderful shift that I did. and post which I've been working as a coach and responsible for some big transformations of uh, large companies. That is a quick introduction on me. This is what I'm passionate about. I do have a YouTube channel of myself wherein I post all my learnings. I try to keep it not to the rudimentary what is stand up and what is planning and all. Try to keep it at a level wherein it is, the concepts are very confusing. So most welcome to have a look at it. And this is what I try to keep myself fit. And this is what I firmly believe in. I firmly believe in sharing knowledge. As you can see, I started my career somewhere else, and today I'm somewhere else. So, and thanks to all the people who have shared their knowledge. So that is what I try to do. Whatever I know, I try to share, and by sharing is what I learn. And this one, I think I firmly believe. The moment I stop learning, I start dying. And I'm a thorough team player. People who have joined from Kerala might recognize this. This is that Nehru Cup, which happens in Alapuz. So I'm a solid team player. That's what I believe in. Well, I would like to do the acknowledgements first. Generally, the practice that people have is do the acknowledgements at the end, but I have the practice of doing the acknowledgements first. So I would like to acknowledge Essential Kanban condensed by David J. Anderson and the Lean Software Development by Mary and Tom Papandik. These are the various books that I picked up from while preparing this webinar. I'll be talking a lot about this content of this book, the Agile Culture through Trust and Ownership, in a bit more detail. Let's quickly see the agenda. Since what I'm talking about is Agile, it's very important for us to understand the relationship between the Agile Manifesto and the core values of the manifesto and the principles. I will not get into the values and principles, but a quick recap is required because a lot is related to that. Next, we'll go a bit deeper and understand the values of the most popular Agile methodologies, Scrum, XP, and Kanban. Yes, we do have DSDM, feature development, feature-driven development, Crystal, and all. I'm not getting into this. The most popular ones are Scrum, XP, and Kanban. So we'll look at the values of that. It is very simple. Anything that we do, if it is not in line with these, then we are not in the Agile mindset space. So it is very important to understand them in a detail. Of course, it is easier said than done to get this right. However, this is not the reason for not to make a honest attempt to get there. So we need to understand the various types of lean ways as well. In the as described in the as in the IT sector in particular, removal of these ways do go a long way in setting up a agile mindset. Next, I will explain this trust ownership model, the one that I explained. It's explained in a lot of detail in the book Agile Culture. So how, in what space the team should be operating on to arrive at an agile mindset. We'll look at that. Finally, based on my experience, I will explain some scenarios which most of the leaders and the team exhibit, which is not in the agile mindset space. That is where the most of the discussions can happen. The scenarios I'll be explaining will be pertaining to the team structure, daily stand up in particular, because there's a lot to learn from this particular seminar with respect to the mindset, and of course measurements, documents, reports. There's once again a lot to look out for in the agile mindset space over there. And of course product backlog, sprint backlog, and the ceremonies in general. Some basic housekeeping, as Niladri mentioned earlier. I will not be looking at the chat. I would requested Niladri to look at the chat, and I'll be taking some pauses in between for any questions. And if any question takes a bit a longer time, we'll use the parking lot. If time permits, we can take it up towards the end. And last but not the least, I would request all of you guys to give a feedback towards the end. I'll set up a Mentimeter wherein I would request you guys to give a feedback. Okay, let's get started. Uh, let's see what the Agile Manifesto's values and principles say. Of course, this would be a repetition for quite a few of you of this, and for people who have not seen this yet. So it's a quick introduction. Agile mindset is at the core. It is all about the attitudes, cultures, and the leadership style. It's not only of the team members, but also of the leaders, right from the top boss in the organization. It has got to do a lot with the leadership styles as well. The Agile mindset is defined by these four core values: individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software, customer collaboration, responding to change, as defined in the Agile Manifesto. And it is guided by these 12 principles, which talks about customer satisfaction, changing requirements, frequent delivery, working software, sustainable development, cooperation between the business and the teams, motivated individuals, face-to-face communications. Of course, face-to-face doesn't literally mean face-to-face. The virtual world is also a face-to-face through the various tools that we have. And technical excellence, simplicity, self-organizing teams, the regular adoption. So this is what is the 12 principles talks about, and it is manifested by the various practices and ceremonies that we follow in the various methodologies, Scrum, XP, and Kanban. So be it stand up, the various practices and ceremonies, be it stand up, requirement, retro, the XP practices, be it TDD, BDD, CI/CD, DevOps, pair programming, collective code ownership, etc. The list can go on. So it is manifested by these practices and principles, guided by the manifested by these practices and ceremonies, guided by the principles, defined by the values, but at the core is the mindset. In fact, I would take this argument a bit further. As long as we are able to, is someone annotating? Is this something? This was not part of my deck.
Okay, no, this is someone is annotating. Let me just clear it off.
Okay.
Clear all drawings here.
Okay. In fact, okay, I got digressed. Yeah. So as long as we are truly, or we can honestly exhibit these values and principles, and it's okay if we don't have these ceremonies in place. It's fine. We will have an agile mindset. It is just that these ceremonies and practices are tried and tested, hence recommended. Unfortunately, many of us copy the ceremonies and follow the rigor and forget to respect these values and principles. So if we do that, then we are just doing agile, not practicing agile. Now let's see the values of the most popular methods that I mentioned: Scrum, XP, and Kanban. Of course, this topic itself is a separate session in itself. However, I'll briefly touch upon these so that when I talk about the scenarios and the various aspects about the agile mindset, you'll be able to connect back to the values which we are not abiding by. So let me start with the Scrum and XP values. One of the key pillars of Scrum is transparency. And transparency can be achieved only if there is clear and honest communication between the team members and between the project stakeholders and the team members. So both are required. And communication, of course, is not about good English or the medium. It is about the message that needs to be delivered with the same intent and spirit to the receiver from the sender. So that is communication. So it is not about good English. XP emphasizes a lot on simplicity. It recommends that we get the simplest thing out, up and running fast. both from the software functionality and the design point of view also. So the erstwhile ways talked about big upfront design, while XP talks of emerging architecture, emerging design, and things like that. So simplicity, XP gives a lot of emphasis on simplicity. Of course, respect is at the core of both XP and Scrum values. It is in line with the Agile Manifesto also, where the individuals and interactions are more important than the process and tools. That is where the respect comes from. We can achieve respect, we can achieve it only if we can achieve the individuals and interactions only if we respect each other's viewpoints. The next, of course, is courage. Courage is to speak up when the situation is also not so conducive or not so comfortable. And of course, courage doesn't mean to be a rebel just for the sake of being a rebel. No, that is different. So I would say, in fact, we all are mature enough to figure out when someone is just being brash or actually displaying courage. We can very well differentiate that. Inspect and adapt are, if you guys all know, there are three pillars of Scrum: transparency, inspect, and adapt. And inspect and adapt is possible only if there's feedback. Feedback on the software delivered, feedback on the process, feedback on the interactions, or in fact, feedback on anything that serves the purpose. So feedback is an integral part of the whole scheme of things. Scrum in particular has got a lot of emphasis on focus. The team is totally focused to deliver the sprint goal. The product owner is focused on getting the backlog right, and the scrum master is there to protect the team and to serve the team. The focus of the scrum master is the uh, um, scrum values and the agile manifesto. So next is the openness. Openness goes a long way in supporting the scrum pillar of transparency. As we saw transparency here, the team members should be open about the problems that they face, and the product owner should be open to take support from the team members to refine the stories. um, and openness is paramount for the transparency to be there. And of course, commitment. The team commits to deliver on the sprint goals, and the ecosystem, the environment that the team operates in, should also support the commitment. And the product owner commits to get the backlog right, and quite a few things on commitment. I'm not getting into more details. Just a recap. Let's look at the Kanban values as well. So from transparency is here again. Uh, in Kanban, it talks about the three pillars of visualization, making the policies explicit, and feedback again. Kanban gives teams transparency at various levels. The work is visible, the status of the work, the understanding of the process, and the whole aspect of how it plays into the decision making. So the belief in Kanban is sharing information openly improves the flow of the business value. Like as the saying goes, no one can fix a secret. So transparency is the key thing out there. The aspects such as demand and capability. So demand and capability is what is the customer demanding or what is the market demanding, and what is the capability of the team. So if a balance has to be struck between both of this is achieved by focusing on the work in progress, popularly known as WIP, work in progress in Kanban. And by a successful implementation of WIP, this the we can shorten the lead time and improve the delivery rate. So Kanban talks a lot about WIP, and by honoring it, we can honor balance. And this is about the collaboration, working together. Kanban method, uh, collaboration is at the heart of Kanban. Next, we have the customer focus again. It's all about the knowing the goal of the system. Mm. Kanban, as you guys would have known, it is a flow of value from the originating to the point of realization. So the Kanban focuses a lot on the flow of value. At every step of the value stream, the value needs to be added, and there's a lot of emphasis on the flow of value. And yes, the customer receives value only when at the end the value is realized, only at the end of the value stream. uh, it's important as we are speaking about the customer value and flow, it's important to understand the flow of value itself. So seeing the flow is an essential part of Kanban. uh, Realizing the flow or understanding the flow brings a lot of predictability in managing the impediments and the issues along the way, the wait times and things like that. um, Of course, this is not a full-fledged session on Kanban. So it's very important to understand these values so that we can understand the mindset a better. Again, leadership. Um, Leadership doesn't mean that people who are higher up in the organization is leaders. No, that is not exactly the what we expect in Kanban. Um, uh, every organization do have a hierarchical structure, but in Kanban, it is expected that at all levels, to achieve valuable delivery, each and everyone need to exhibit those leadership trait. That is what Kanban emphasizes a lot on. And in Kanban, we the what we say in Kanban is know the current situation of the current composition of the team and start from where you know. So it is very important to understand the current situation and improve from there. The fuller the understanding of what we are about to alter. So I'm talking of a situation wherein there's a transformation from the erstwhile ways of working or the traditional ways of working to the Kanban ways of working. So it's very important for us to understand the current situation. Then only the um, altering that would be much more easier and it would be much more acceptable. Then Kanban gives a lot of emphasis on agreement. Agreement is the commitment to move towards a common goal, and respecting and accommodating wherever possible on the differences is a key in Kanban. Of course, when I say agreement or respecting, it doesn't mean that it is management by consensus. So it is just a co-commitment uh, to continuous improvement. So we should look at agreement from that point of view, that we all as a team are committed for continuous improvement. Again, finally, the respect. So as I mentioned earlier, so in Kanban, we respect the existing roles, the existing which is there in the organization, which is undergoing change. So we don't in Kanban, it is not the belief is that you don't have to define something afresh. Respect the current flow, understand the current flow, and continuously improve. So this is the pillar. This is the core of Kanban. This is the core values of Kanban. And anything that we do, if it upholds these values, then we are agile. Else, we are not. Again, not getting into details of this, assuming that we all know this. And as and when we go further, if anything comes up, we can talk in the breaks. Now let's briefly understand the types of waste in the software industry. So these were generally known as 7 types of waste as described in Lean. Um, Partially done work. It does not add any value to the customer. Neither does it allow the team to learn from. The team can learn only from a completed work, not from a partially done work. That is where the feedback comes from. So only when I have a completed work, I give to the customer, I learn. So partially done work doesn't allow the team to learn. And it just increases WIP, work in progress, and thereby the inventory. So how do you avoid it? So working in small batches reduces WIP, thereby reduces partially done work. Extra processes. This is a no-brainer. We all have seen a lot of this in all our work, or wherever in the career path that we have. We have been forced to do some activity just because the process mandates is, and none of us have any clue why we are asked to do it. So if we just dig into it, why are doing it? I got no clue. That's pretty common. I'm sure pretty much all of you would have experienced it. Extra features. So you'd be surprised to know. So the biggest source of waste in the software is extra features. This is the data that was presented by Jim Jonsau in XP 2002, the XP conference of 2002. It was based on the survey done by the Standish Group. It was found that we could have been better off by not having almost 65% of the features, since they were never or rarely used. Just imagine, only 20% of the functionality is often used. So they took a slice of the various types of projects and scales and everything. And this is the data that is presented. So just imagine the energy. When I say energy, the time, effort, cost wasted in developing these features which are never used. In addition to this, these unused features posed a lot of challenges and complexity to the entire process of the product development. So this is a big source of waste, which we certainly can live without. This means that no matter how good these features are, this will contribute to your waste. And to take it a step further, so these features which were rarely used, if one person uses it and there's a bug in that, to fix that bug, we introduce more bugs. We make the product much more complicated and much more bloated. So extra features is a waste. Multitasking. This is a big killer. Uh, in fact, as we speak, if any one of you are multitasking, looking at your phone or your email or chat or nothing, it reduces your efficiency. It has been found by, you can read about in this, the quality software management book by Wenberg. You tend to lose, just by adding a single project to the scheme of things, you tend to lose 20% of your time. By the time you add the third, half of your time is wasted in task switching. This is a big problem, even if you're working on a single project at any point of time. The simple act of being distracted by an email, a phone call, or a instant message is profound. So task switching results in very poor quality. And of course, delays in communication, morale, quite a few drawbacks of multitasking. So we think that we can multitask, but no, we are context switching, and that comes with a huge cost. Waiting. Now coming to waiting, it causes a lot of waste. By adding an extra work, delays that prevent work are obvious, and the delay could be a pause in between the handoffs also. If a project is completed, let me give an example. If a project is completed, but the stakeholders have not reviewed the work, and they review the work after some time, maybe 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, and then they find issues. So as a developer, as a team member, as a tester, I have to get into that mind space to fix that bug. So waiting for a feedback is also a waiting, so it is a waste. Uh, Next is motion. So basically the handoffs. So whenever there's an handoff, there's always a information loss, and because of the communication gap that is created, and of course, whenever and the extra effort that needs to be put in for knowledge transfer and training, so motion is a waste. Finally, excuse me. Finally, the defects. This is a no-brainer. Fixing a defect takes extra work, um, and as I mentioned earlier, the developer has to get back into that mind space when he actually develop a feature to fix that bug. It is a waste. So once again, it costs whatever work that I as a developer left behind. There's a waste there also, and the quality of the defect also that I'm fixing is that much lower, because I have to get into that mind space of that uh, when I actually develop that feature. So addressing these lean ways also um, uh, contribute to a lot towards moving to agile mindset. Let me take a brief pause for any questions if there are. Iladri, if there are any questions.
Not over in chat window. I have 20% in YouTube. One questions they have asked is, can I ask my question in French? I responded, I can only understand English. But
Sorry, sorry.
all right. So the question was asked by Dua Farmin Gon. Okay, so over here, if anyone have any questions, you can quickly raise your hand and ask, or you can put the question on your chat window. If you don't have, we can probably go ahead.
And like you just mentioned, so if at all anyone, I just now you mentioned that people, there's a French person out there. Please let me know if I have to reduce my number of words per minute, if I have to talk a bit slowly. So
Sure.
let me know, because we tend to talk a bit
Yeah, so
on a faster
I think
side.
everyone and they are able to hear you. So you can write down on the chat window from the YouTube participants if you think we need to reduce the pace that currently we're going on. Probably we can take care of that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we can move on. Iladri?
Yeah, we can continue
Yeah.
now. We don't have any.
Hello. There is a
Someone was.
question asked in the Zoom group chat. Task switching is a difficult one. How do we?
Okay, task switching is a difficult one. How do we manage this? Okay, a question asked by Ola.
Yeah, hola. Very true. Task switching is a difficult thing. How do we manage it? So I can talk from my personal experience. So one thing that I follow is I always work with my Outlook in offline mode. So whenever I got to do some work, I switch off my Outlook. I switch off my distractions, which is a big killer, my WhatsApp or my instant messaging, LinkedIn and Instagrams and things like that. So give it that dedicated time. That is one thing that I personally follow. And I've seen one beautiful thing which with one of my teams. They had a beautiful working agreement. So every day they had kept aside, they had a working agreement that every day for 2 hour duration, they decided, okay, from so and so time to so and so time, no one will disturb others unless you are dying. I'm putting it in a lighter sense. So it is to that. So come what may, no one will disturb others. So generally the tendency is, and more so in this co-located form of working, the if I'm stuck with an issue, the tendency is, okay, let me talk to the expert or let me talk to someone, get it resolved and things like that. So while it helps in me progressing, but the damage that is done to the other person is profound, because there's a context switching that happens. So they had a working agreement that for so and so time, in that the peak productive time for that team, No one will disturb each other. So there are multiple ways of handling this, Ola.
Great, thanks, Mahendra. There is one more questions we have from Ajay Jingarde. How Scrum and Kanban coexist?
Uh, they can coexist, Ajay. So this is a bit more elaborate question. This is Ajay, right?
Yeah, Ajay.
Yeah, Ajay. So let me just answer it in a brief. For example, people say WIP, work in progress, WIP limit is applicable only in Kanban. So I would say no. So in uh, in a Scrum ways of working, let's assume there's a 2 weeks of Scrum. So let me try to annotate here. I can annotate here probably, right?
Yeah, you can
Let me
share.
annotate here.
Yeah, you can.
I,
Yeah. Okay.
this is fine by me. This is fine by me. So let's assume that we are in a 2 week sprint. Is this annotation fine? This color fine? The
If
background?
is there light color? Any light color you have? Because
I
both
don't know
are.
whether I can
You
choose the
pick the
color.
yellow one, the center yellow or the first one. Below the color patch at the
Oh, color
below. Yeah.
palette.
Yeah.
Shall I use this?
Yeah.
This is better. Okay. So let's assume this is a 2 week sprint. So this is a 2 week sprint starting the first day and the 10th day. So if at all, uh, the general tendency is there are around, let's take a 10-member team. I'm taking a hypothetical case to explain how WIP can be applicable in Scrum as well. So if there are around 6 to 7 developers and 2 or 3 testers, that's how the typical combination is. And the tendency is each one of the developer, if there are 4 stories, each one of the developer picks one story with him and they go up till the 6th or the 7th day and they give it to the tester on the 6th or the 7th day, and the tester is expected to test in these 2 or 3 days. So this is a beautiful waterfall retrofitted in a sprint. So the WIP here is 4 stories at any point of time. Rather than this, if at all we work like this, okay, let the 3 or 4 2 developers start with one story. The best WIP is 1. If not, it has to be 2. So let's assume the best case. All of us work on one story, finish it within the 2nd or the 3rd day, give it to the tester, and work like this. Sequentially work. So WIP is applicable in uh, Scrum also. So likewise, all of these concepts can still be applicable in the Scrum ways of working. For example, lead time and cycle time, generally we talk in the Kanban world. Of course, we can calculate the lead time of the features that we deliver in the Scrum world. They can coexist, and they should, in fact. It is just that in Kanban, we don't have these typical boundaries as the sprint start and the sprint
Time
end
box.
and things like that. The time boxing is not defined. And of course, nothing stops us from using daily stand-ups in Kanban. It is defined in the Scrum guide. Nothing stops us from using there. In Kanban, it is known as policies. We define policies when the flow of work happens in the value stream. In the Scrum world, we call it as a definition of ready or a definition of done. So pretty much that nothing stops us from using the best practices from both the sides. And yes, in Kanban, just because the fact that there's a flow, the focus or the specialities of the skills, the niche skills still remain. While in the Scrum world, we support or we encourage people to be multi-skilled. Ajay, did I at least briefly answer? This is all that I can get into in this
Yeah,
time,
Mahendra,
Ajay.
there are two questions that we have from YouTube. One is Ayub Kobal, who is asking, I want to ask if emotional depth might be a waste. And on the similar waste context, we have another question from Ravip Singh. As you said, defects is the waste, but I think it's a part of Scrum planning. So can you explain why it's a waste? So emotional depth and the defects, that a question on that.
Uh, let me admit, I'm emotional depth is something that I'm probably you'll have to elaborate a bit, Ayub. Uh, Ayub, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to elaborate a bit. So let me take the defects first.
Okay.
So di- uh, in the meanwhile, if Ayub can elaborate what did he actually mean, then probably we can
Yeah.
go
So
over
in
it.
the meanwhile, I you
Yeah,
can type in the chat window.
yeah. What did you actually mean by emotional depth? So yeah, defects. See, defects is basically something which is not supposed to be there, which got introduced in the development life cycle. So it is a waste. There's no doubt. Now, when you say it is part of the Scrum development, so I I don't probably exactly understand what did you mean by that it is part of the Scrum development. We don't develop code to introduce defect. That's certainly not. Probably what you meant was how do I
You
handle
mentioned, I think
production
it's a
defects?
part of Scrum planning.
Yeah, yeah. When you mentioned it's a part of Scrum planning, what I understand is that we we pick up production defects or field defects to fix in our planning. This is what I understood. Am I right? If you can
Yeah, so I think if you are not
rephrase.
right, they will respond, but you can continue
Okay.
because
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if that is the case, then yes, we need to handle production defects also during up whenever we pick up Scrum. But when you say it is part of Scrum planning, certainly not. We don't plan to produce defects. Yes, if the thought processes, are we supposed to handle production defects and pick up some part of the maintenance activity in our planning? Yes. And how do we go about doing it? That's a separate topic altogether. Should we size the defects in story points, and how do we incorporate in the capacity planning, so on and so forth? That's a different topic altogether. But if you are, if the question is, isn't it part of Scrum planning? I would say no. We don't intend to produce defects. Yes, fixing defects. Yes. How do we go about? That's a different topic.
Okay, I think we
Yeah,
can actually have few questions part for your emotional depth, and two questions we got it in the chat window. Rajiv,
Sure.
no, Jairaj Vatta, you asked when you talk about working agreement, does it need to be paper based and signed by all team members, or it can be based on team's mutual agreement? I think it will be a
We'll
quick
take
one.
it
You
to
can,
the end.
yeah.
Oh, we can take it at the end.
Yeah,
We are,
so and
yeah,
yeah, so there are
yeah. If you
two
don't
more
mind,
questions. Yeah, so let's park this question. I'm just putting it in somewhere in a parking lot, and we'll have them. You can continue because the interest of the momentum you right now
yeah,
you
yeah,
are having.
yeah. So, and guys who have asked these questions, you're most welcome to hang on after the end of the this one, and I'm more than happy to take questions. And whoever wants to drop off can drop off once the schedule, once the content that I have in mind is completed, and we can continue talking, Niladri.
Sure.
I'm game for that. Hmm?
All right. Yeah,
Okay, so
let's proceed.
let's proceed. Let's proceed. Okay, so this is the trust and ownership model. So this is in that book which I had mentioned earlier in the beginning. It's on the agile culture leading through trust and ownership. It's a beautiful book. I strongly recommend that all of you guys should read it. Here the authors have explained this trust ownership grid. On the x-axis, the team or the individual ownership is plotted from low to high on the x-axis. On the y-axis, the leadership, or when I say leadership, or it can be the business process in the organization, is plotted on from control to trust. When I say business process, so let's take for example, swipe in, swipe out is a process, business process. Timesheet, submission of timesheet is a business process. So it can be anything. It should be the leadership style, or it could be the business process. plotted from control to trust. Generally, most of the teams and the leaders operate in the command and control quadrant. If the leaders have lot of trust, but the team does not have an ownership, then it is a sure shot recipe for failure. So here the leaders have a lot of trust, but the team is not showing any ownership. The ownership is low. So it's a failure quadrant. And the leaders realize that very fast and they start exhibiting control. So the team moves to the command and control space. In case the team is exhibiting a lot of ownership, here the team is lot, they're highly motivated, they want to take a lot of ownership, they want to try out, and they're putting their heart and soul into the work and things like that, and the leadership wants to exhibit, or the business process wants to exhibit a lot of control. So this is a very dangerous conflict situation. This is the most dangerous situation. It's a conflict situation. So here either the team gives up and they just go by what the leader says, or the team members start moving out. So the situation moves to the command and control. This books, this book, the authors in this book explain that it is not possible for these failure and conflict quadrants to exist for long. However, it is in this quadrant, the energy and innovation quadrant, where the actual benefit lies. We can reach this by having a agile mindset, not only from the team side. So generally what we see is agile mindset means, okay, the only team should have agile mindset. No, no, it is not only from the team side. Even the leadership, when I say leadership, the leadership as well as the business processes should exhibit the right agile mindset. And it is in this green quadrant uh, that the innovation and energy. So when we move to that, the leaders characterize the leaders view of the team, that they believe the team is committed to deliver what is needed, and they believe that the team knows the actions that need to be taken, and they they firmly believe that the team understands the importance of the project, and the leaders thoroughly trust the team. So this is what the leaders view of the team in the energy and innovation quadrant. Now, as a result of this, the new beliefs that the leaders develop, they help the team to take ownership. The team starts taking ownership, and um, they constantly convey the vision, the value, and the urgency of the project, the product that is being developed. And they always help the team to focus. So as you see, if you can see, focus was one of the key values that we discussed earlier. Um, and customer they customers, the leaders don't hesitate to connect the team directly to the customers, and they enable the team. So if you see, one of our 12 principles is motivated individuals. Trust that the team will deliver, and give them the environment to deliver. So they enable the team. Now, and this gives the leader to do some strategic thinking rather than getting into transactional issues. So just by moving into the energy and innovation and the new belief that the leader develops, these are the new behaviors that the leader start exhibiting. Now, when the leader starts working in this zone, the team also responds. The team also responds. The team starts take ownership, and they become accountable. So and they optimize. So they can look at optimizing the whole. One of the key aspects of Kanban is optimize the whole. Don't do local optimization. So the team starts looking at optimizing the whole, and more importantly, they stand and fall together as a team. So backbiting and ditching each other, so those stop. So they stand and fall together as a team. So the reason that I brought this grid in this context of the agile mindset is the fact that the benefits of having an agile mindset is huge. As you can see, the leaders change, the team changes, and we move towards the energy and innovation quadrant by having the right agile mindset. And this shift is not worth ignoring. I'll take a quick pause predominantly on this model. If there's anything that I can quickly answer. Niladri, is there anything?
No, we got couple of the questions from that time. Someone
Yeah,
named,
we
yes, yeah, we'll continue on that. But I think there is one point someone mentioned. The name is happyagility.com. Already 40 minutes over. Mindset is not at all started. So I'm not sure is the question or what exactly it is, but
yeah, it's a
that's the
feedback.
question. Yeah.
So yeah, so it's already 40 minutes. Point taken. That's why Niladri, I don't know whether we forgot to set that context. So we need to have this as a 1.5 hour. Is what I was recommending. So yeah,
Yeah, let's
very true.
continue now and let's have
Let's
all the
continue.
question answer at the end.
Yeah. So now we are moving to the mindset space. So let me start giving examples. As mentioned in the agenda, let me give some examples. Uh, this is the team structure. So it is very important for the leaders to get the team structure right. So generally what we see is happening in the transformation. There's a manager who's managing or directing multiple projects. And when the organization decides to move to the agile ways of working, all of these are moved under one umbrella and named as a squad or a scrum team and things like that. This arrangement is just to enable the project manager, who's now renamed or as a product owner or a scrum master, to get all of his or her updates and status reporting under one umbrella. Is there any common ground amongst the team members to collaborate and deliver? This is something that we need to. Does this arrangement foster any team collaboration amongst the team members? Or is there a common binding squad mission? Or it is just a matter of convenience for the product owner or the scrum master to get all of his updates in a single stand-up? We need to honestly answer this question. There are other similar scenarios where it is difficult to achieve an agile mindset. To list a few, there's a common practice that I've seen. Customers choose rival vendors, one for development, other for testing, and expect that the competition amongst them improves quality. Let us honestly answer this. If the intent is this, is it an environment to foster team collaboration? Is there an incentive for the testers from one vendor to collaboratively work with the developer of the other vendor, so that the developer starts coding, so that the tester finds less of issues? Will the tester be so very involved in the product refinement? These are the questions that we need to ask. So by having such an arrangement, aren't we killing one team spirit? This is something that we need to answer. Next, one of the scenarios, when a scrum master or when the scrum teams or squads are formed, the product owner is just given a set of team members and asked to deliver on the squad mission. But we know the product owner is responsible for the return of investment. He or she should certainly have a say in the team composition. If this is not happening, then alignment is under question. Alignment is one of the key values of safe scaled agile framework. So we are not getting into the details of what alignment is in the scaled agile framework and things like that. But is there alignment of the team members to the squad mission? Is there trust and ownership bestowed on the product owner? These are questions that we need to ask. In the erstwhile ways of working, we had an offshore lead and an on-site lead. Now, after the organization starts to move to a agile transformation journey, I've seen offshore Scrum lead, offshore on-site Scrum master, offshore Scrum master, all sorts of things. So don't get me wrong. So I'm not telling that distributed teams or geographically dislocated teams are not productive or are nimble or agile. No, that's not what I'm trying to tell. Um, and one more thing that I very commonly seen is we had a technical lead who generally would interact with all the customers, and the information would be passed on to the team members. Now we just name him as agile team lead, and he's still doing the same thing. So by just by renaming the existing roles, we need to honestly answer: have we reduced handoffs and waits? And thus, does this setup foster team collaboration? These are things that we need to answer. I don't have solutions, so I have the right questions. So it is for us as agilists, the agile coach, the scrum masters, for us to find the right answers for the contextual situation, respecting the values and principles. That is a key thing. Uh, and we have generally seen this. If the product owner or the scrum master is technical in nature, so the habit is to get into the how aspect of the story. Mm, how the what code to write, what stored procedure to change, so on and so forth. The how aspect of it. If the product owner or the scrum master have them expertise, it's okay to give that expert advice, but not taking away the complete ownership from the team members. There's a very thin line in between giving advice, expert advice, support, and taking ownership. So if that is happening, is this a servant leader setup or a command and control setup? Is there a trust on the team, or are we giving ownership to the team? Uh, let's move on. I intended to pause for a few minutes over here. In the interest of time, I'll move on. There are some more examples on the team structure. Um, there's a popular belief that we don't need a scrum master as a full-time role, and anyone can play a scrum master, and it's generally known as a rolling hat scrum master. This is fine as long as the teams have reached that level of maturity. But in the initial journey of the agile transformation, a scrum master is really required. He's not just there to do the logistics of the daily stand up, setting up video conference and all. No, the scrum master's primary role is to foster the agile mindset and the you know, bring in that right cultural behavior which is in line with the values and the principles. And he or she has to ensure about those lean ways. Those lean ways don't exist. So and of course in removing impediments, in coaching the leadership, a lot is to be done from a scrum master. So a rolling hat scrum master is a big no. uh, this regularly happens in the transformation. We should ensure that the teams and the squad should be formed keeping the end user in mind. Generally what I've seen that when I take over went into a transformation, agile transformation, they're already if they have undergone some bit of restructuring. Initially they were based on components and modules, and they are just renamed as scrum teams and scrum squad, some squads. So if that is the case, the component structure and the module structure or the function structure still remains, but by just renaming them as so and so squad, so and so team doesn't work. So are we missing the customer focus here? Have we got the value stream mapping right? Have we got the product backlog alignment right? So these are some questions that we need to look into. Rewards and recognition. Yes, this is a very important aspect, no doubt. However, we need to start looking at the team rewards rather than having individual rewards. Focusing solely on individual rewards. This is a very touchy thing. I know, very sensitive thing. People out there might be thinking, should we not reward key star of the sprint, star of the team, and things like that? No. So that really defeats the purpose. Um, does it foster team collaboration? So the whole reward and recognition needs to be relooked at, redesigned. The idea should be to encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing, teamwork, and so on and so forth. I've seen organizations wherein the year-end salary hike is also based on the team performance. That is a most beautiful thing. So how we have to find a solution for it. Uh, Here, I have had many occasions wherein the team members are not so very comfortable sharing their feedback on the product or on the process or on the people in the retrospective meetings, while they are talking to me one on one as a coach. So if that is the case, it's a point of the openness missing in the ecosystem. Is the environment conducive enough to exhibit courage to tell the right thing? These are the questions that we need to answer. This is most of the times we see this. The product owner or the scrum master hijacks the daily stand up. There's a lot of difference between facilitating and running the stand up. So there's a lot of difference. If that is the case, where is our servant leadership? Team collaboration. Lean ways. So in the erstwhile ways of working, it was the project manager or the project lead who was supposed to be addressing all these aspects. But in the agile ways of working, it is everyone's responsibility. It is just not the scrum master or the product owner or the lead. Everyone is responsible to identify and address these lean ways. If this is not happening, the ownership is missing from the team side. The trust is missing. Or is it a commitment and the support from the leadership to eliminate these ways? These are the things that we need to answer. Uh, Impediments. Yes, we all understand that Scrum Master's primary responsibility is to resolve impediments. However, from the team's point of view, just by raising it in the daily stand-up doesn't suffice. It doesn't end there. It ensures that the team members should ensure that it is taken to a logical closure. The ownership should be there. If that is not happening, the ownership of the team member, the commitment, the focus of the team member, these are to be questioned. And this happens a lot. The management directly goes to the team members, the developers, the testers in the team, and they try to get the specific, because of the position, they are able to pull out the team member, get their work, get the management's work done, and jeopardizing the sprint goal and things like that. So this has to stop. So if this is happening, the alignment is missing. The alignment of the management towards the agile ways of working is missing. The ownership of the product owner, the scrum master could be a problem. The focus, the commitment, and even from the management side, so that could be an issue. Uh, this is one big thing. So if at all we need to get the agile transformation right, this is one key role, product owner. And if you have a visiting product owner, then it's a big problem. A few traits of a visiting product owner as he or she does a lip service to the daily stand up. I Why should I be in the daily stand up? It is for the team. So no, I don't have anything to talk. Why should I participate? No, it doesn't work that way. And I've seen product owners who, because they are big timers in the organization, they feel that writing stories in any of the ALM tools, Agile Lifecycle Management tools, Jira version 1 and things like that, is below their paycheck. So they don't want to do it. So they have another one, a proxy product owner or a business analyst. Oh, you go and write. It doesn't work that way. Uh, so a product owner should not shy away from the clerical work of writing the stories also. That is where the ownership of the product owner is shown. And yes, rendering a rip service to the product backlog grooming. A product owner coming ill prepared for the product backlog refinement is a big no. And not respecting the various acceptance criteria. Just because a product owner is in a higher position out there, he or she tries to get in more done, adds acceptance criteria of the sprint has started, not respecting definition of ready. No, no. Well, the when we get into a transformation, so we have seen that there's always a line manager structure or reporting structure to the individual team members. Now the line managers start interfering in the operations of the team, so that should stop. So it is the product owner who is responsible for the ROI. Is the product owner is responsible for the team. So he or she owns the team. So it's as simple as that. That should stop. If that is happening, have we as transformation agents address the power centers, silos, the customer focus? We need to answer them. I'll take a small pause before we move on. Niladri?
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions came up so far. If you want to address all of them, it will be kind of 7-8 questions.
Okay. So is it okay if we take it to the end?
Yeah, I think let's take it to the end because we have a
Yeah.
couple of questions from YouTube, couple of questions from here.
Yeah. So for the people who are interested, can hang on for the questions to be answered. So in the interest or keeping the view of people who have joined here for the mindset thing. So let's complete that. So people,
Right.
guys, you'll have to bear with us. Let's move on. So let us take a quick peek into the daily stand-up. Stand-up is one of the most powerful ceremonies. So that's a beautiful, just a 15-minute ceremony, but it's a very powerful. Unfortunately, this is the one which is grossly misunderstood. That's the reason why I have that very specific as stand-up over here. So this is something, as we all understand, stand-up is all about what did I do yesterday, what am I doing today, and any impediments. Let's see this individual, if he's saying, I've finished analysis and doing coding and no impediments. So yes, he's followed the rigor. But was there any knowledge sharing happening? Was there any occasion for team collaboration to happen? Rather than that, if you had told, okay, I've done, it has to be a sort of a mini knowledge sharing session. So this is the files that I've touched. This is the logic that I've. It is not about hogging the entire conversation. It has to be really crisp and short. Within that brief 30-40 seconds or 60 seconds, you should be able to share the knowledge. Let me take another example. This person is telling, I don't have anything to update today, hence I don't need to attend the stand-up. So it's a big no. If this is happening, what about team collaboration? What about commitment? What about the ownership? Because it's the entire team that has committed for the goal of the sprint goal. So yes, he doesn't have anything to talk for today, but he can surely help others. And in this conversation, he can pick up something. So that is very important. Now let's see this scenario. This is very common. I have sent a mail to so and so, and I'm waiting for a reply for the last 4-5 days. So this is very common. Now this person is expecting, okay, someone, maybe the product owner or the scrum master should look into it. No. What about focus? What about the commitment? What about the ownership from the team member? And probably we as an transformation agents not addressed the silos in the organization. So if at the end of the day, if all of the team members honestly answer this question, am I contributing to the team to move towards the sprint goal? If we honestly answer this question, a lot of things would fall into place for sure. Now let's quickly look into the measurements and documents, documentations and reports, how agile mindset plays a role over there. I've seen this a lot. Measuring individual story points delivered. So this cannot be done and should never be attempted to be done also. I'm pretty much vocal about it because the story is delivered in totality, not just by doing some design or development or testing or whatever it is. Let's assume that somehow we creatively manage to measure it also, then are we it is really fostering team collaboration. So look at it this way. Why would someone bother to help the other team member if this is what is the measurement that the management is doing? Let's honestly answer this. Um, Tasks. So task is basically the how part of achieving the story. It is generally estimated in hours during the sprint planning meeting, and it is just to get the perspective of the capacity of the team. So considering their leave plan, vacations, or any additional work or trainings that they are in, and so on and so forth. It is just to get a perspective of the capacity to do a good capacity planning. Now conducting a post-mortem on why this task was supposed to do in X hours, why did it take 5 hours, is a big no-no. The very idea of doing a postmortem comes from the old ways of thinking. How do I keep my members utilized? Um, so it is a big no-no. If that is happening, where is trust and ownership? Uh, let's this is a big thing. There are quite a few incorrect productivity measurements that we have that I have seen. Judging the developers by the lines of code that is delivered, or maybe the number of story points that is delivered, or number of stories that is delivered. Big no-no. Evaluating the reviewer, code reviewer, test case reviewer by the number of review comments that is being logged. No. Measuring the productivity of the testers by the number of test cases executed. It doesn't make any sense. Measuring the efficiency of the test cases, the tester by the number of defects that is logged, makes no sense. So basically you will end up getting what you measure. Just think about it. Are they in line with the values and principles, or any one of these are eliminating any lean waste? So no. So even measuring defects log is not eliminating waste. I mean, it's not eliminating a defect. It is just reporting on the defect. There's a vast difference. You're not eliminating defects. You're just reporting. Quality has always to be built in. So it has to be built in quality. If we measure the testers by the defects logged, then the inclination of the tester will be to log defects rather than collaborate with the developers. We are killing collaboration. So we are killing team collaboration by all of these incorrect productive. I'm sure quite a few people on this group would have been seeing all of these happening in your teams, in your organizations. But these are the questions that we need to answer ourselves, and we need to take it to the management. That is where we as change agents have a big role to play. WIP limits, we did speak about it. It's an important metric in, of course, in Kanban, and I did explain how it can be done in Scrum also. So most of the times we define WIP limits, but we keep on violating them. It doesn't make any sense. The manager, that thought process comes from keeping the resources busy. So that thought process comes from utilization. Uh, Productivity is measured by utilizing people. No, utilization is not productivity. Productivity is different in the agile world. Utilization is not productivity. So, and the moment we violate the WIP limit, we have missed out a golden opportunity to identify bottlenecks. And if we keep on violating the WIP, where is the respect for the WIP as a process, as a metric itself? Where is the agreement? Policies. We spoke about this in Kanban. We call as policies. In the Scrum world, we talk in terms of definition of ready and definition of done. If we don't respect, where's the alignment? Alignment is missing. Yeah, I'm sure most of us have seen this a lot. I've even seen people who are sitting next to each other sending emails to each other rather than not talking to each other. So it's a shame. So team collaboration is missing. Have we addressed as change agents, have I addressed the silos? Where is the trust? Where is the transparency? These are some very uncomfortable questions that we need to address. Documentation. We have seen a lot of it. So there's why are we doing this? What is the value that is adding? This is one of the big ticket items of this. There are unnecessary reports, reams and reams of reports that we end up generating. So much of time and energy we waste. We involve the developers, the testers, whose primary skill set is to develop and test and do technical work, rather than that they are engaged in generating reports. Documentation. The erstwhile world had upfront documentation, while here we emphasize more on the working software over the documentation. Yeah, I'm not telling test cases and test plans are not required. Or most of the times we end up writing these documents just because our process mandates it. Is it really adding any value? We'll have to answer. This is one big thing, lessons learned document. I've just picked up a few. There are many more that might be popping up in your head. So in my days of project management, there was one beautiful document that I used to write lessons learned. And I was supposed to upload in the tool, and only then I can close the project. I'm sure most of us have that. And whatever I write in that, irrespective of whether if I write Sholay story also, no one would read it. So it's a waste. So requirements, elaborate requirement documents. Even in, I've seen in people who work in the Scrum way, stories way, they expect the requirements to be written in so much of detail. Every word is to be described. No, it doesn't work that way. So then the three C's of a story itself, the one of the three C's of the story itself is violated. Collaboration. You write a story in just that form so that there's a occasion for you to collaborate. It is not that you are asking for the entire requirement document to be written part of the story. No. So let's pass this litmus test. If you are a customer, will you pay for all of this? You honestly pass this litmus test whenever you pick up any, when you talk of documentation. If this still exists, then do we really understand our Agile manifesto? Do we really understand the lean ways? These are some things that we need to look at. One more thing. So this is a beautiful thing. So a typical myth is just because we are in Agile project, we don't do planning. No. We, in fact, we do a lot of planning than the erstwhile ways of working. But we don't believe in doing upfront project plans. The plan has to be agile. It is not that that's a whole thing. In Agile, the plan itself should be agile. Is there any specific question that has caught your mind, Niladri? I can take a small water break for myself.
Yeah, no, there are a couple of questions from the YouTube. That is, someone is asking how to deal with dev and test happening in different geographics as different teams. How can we improvise this?
We can talk at the end.
Yeah, so this is something.
We
So most of the
yeah.
questions we can actually park it. And how do you build a
Perfect.
culture of customer focus and customer experience? So we'll can take all of them at the
We
end.
can take all of them toward the end. Yeah. And believe me, this is all. I'm just trying to get you guys thinking on all of these aspects. And towards the end, we can debate about, or we can discuss about the questions that on these lines, Niladri. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's quickly eyeball over the product backlog and the sprint backlog. As I mentioned earlier, inspect and adapt are two of the key pillars of two of the three pillars of Scrum. And having a good product or a program backlog which does not encourage or foster inspect adapt is certainly not an agile mindset. The product backlog should always be organized and managed so that there's a regular system integrated demo that's happening, and the feedback should keep on flowing. And in a scaled scenario, this gets a bit more complicated and critical. wherein multiple Scrum teams are in a big program, 150 member type of a program increment. So it gets all the more complicated. And in the absence of this alignment and the customer focus, so if there's no inspected app, and then the feedback as a value is missing. Uh, ah, Most of the generally what I've seen the team members tell that okay, it's only the product owner's responsibility to write the stories. So in the erstwhile world, the product owner, or the in the erstwhile world, the role was known as business analyst. He or she wrote the business requirement document or the functional requirement document, and he just prayed that everything is fine, and he's captured everything. But generally that's not the case. It's not possible for one person to think of everything. That is why in the agile, in our scrum teams or in the agile ways of working, we say that collaborative story writing is a collaborative exercise. If that is not happening, then the team collaboration and the customer's focus from the team itself is missing. uh, Yeah, sprint goal. Not able to articulating a sprint goal is one of the primary responsibilities of the product owner. And there's one beautiful book, Fixing Your Scrum, by Ryan Ripley and Todd, which has come out very recently. You can Google about it, Fixing Your Scrum. A beautiful book on all of these Scrum values and the importance of the product owner, importance of the sprint goal. If a sprint goal is not articulated, then alignment is missing and customer focus is missing. If at the end of the sprint, if I cannot add value incrementally to my product, then alignment and customer focus are missing. Now, this is one flip side of having a definition of ready. Definition of ready as a term, definition of ready, of course, is not defined in the Scrum Guide, but this is a normal practice of we having a definition of ready. But there's a flip side to it. The team members should not use definition of ready as a shield to take up challenging work. So just a small example, it is not necessary to figure out the every aspect of the how to accomplish what, that is a story in the planning meeting. We'll discover it in the 2 week sprint. We'll discover it all along the way. All the 10 members are there. We'll discover it. So please don't use definition of ready as a shield so that we are not picking up challenging work. If that is happening, then the customer focus is missing from the team side for sure. Task completion versus story completion. Yeah, this is something which is very common that I see when teams move to. Individual members are very focused on completing their own task. Yes, there's focus, but there's only focus on their own task. That's a very wrong connotation of the wrong understanding of the focus. So this is certainly not an agile mindset. The focus of every individual should be to deliver or completion of the stories rather than the individual task, the individual how that they are owned upon. If that is happening, the team collaboration is certainly a big question mark. And of course, customer focus from the team side is missing. Not locking down of the sprint backlog. We briefly spoke about it. So the sprint backlog has to be frozen so that we can protect the sprint goal. So it takes a lot of effort from the product owner and the scrum master and the team and the leadership to make this happen. I'm sure pretty much all of us would have seen this, that the sprint backlog keeps on changing in the duration of the sprint. A big no-no. If that is happening, a lot of things are going wrong over here. Balance is missing, servant leadership is questioned, focus, commitment, all of these are under question. This is one beautiful thing. Just because we have a tool like Jira, which we can track time and things like that. So the tendency of the leadership or the management is to use it as a tracking tool rather than a agile life cycle management tool. So because Jira is very configurable and all these tools are very configurable, we start using it as a tool to track time then the whole agile mindset itself is under question. So the moment you use a tool for the wrong purpose, it is not the problem with the tool, it is a problem with the person who's using it. Again, this is one, I'm sure Niladri, who's an expert out here on Jira, he conducts lots of classes. So this is one graph that you might want to get in touch with him if you want to talk about Jira and things like that. And yes, I have also got some on my YouTube. So there's this graph in Jira. So this is red. This is a typical burn down chart, effort burn down. There's a red line and the green line. The focus of the management is always on the green line. So there's no point. How is the team progressing towards the goal on a day-to base? Gone is gone. The focus should be on the red line rather than the green line. So next. This one. If I'm not able to differentiate what is the story, what is the spike, what is the task, or what is just an activity, so then the fundamental of a story itself is missing. Where is my invest criteria? So for me as a product owner and a scrum master, I should have a firm understanding on the differences between these. That will go a long way in explaining same to the team members. Or engineering. So in XP, this is a key thing in SP, which is addressed by the principle of simplicity. Here we say, do not boil the ocean. So just get the simple thing out and running and get feedback. Inspect, adapt, and build further. So just to give an example, I'll probably talk at the code level because this is a bit looks weird. So let's assume that we are writing, since I'm from a Java world and people in the Java world probably can appreciate it. So if there are some scenarios and some exception handling, you don't think of all the n different ways of exception handling. Now itself, that's okay. So whatever that you can think of, get the simple things up and running, and then continually inspect and adapt. You can't think of all possible scenarios, all just focus on the most simple thing, get it up and running, then keep on improving. Even the design, even the architecture, everything should be emerging. So don't do over engineering, focus on simplicity. We spoke about these extra features. I will not get into more detail over here. Once again, if this is happening, what about the lean ways, the customer focus? This is one thing. Just because it's a hierarchical structure, a product owner is a bit higher in the management and higher in the organization. The team members just accept the stories without insisting on firm, clear acceptance criteria. And during the course of the time, they start cribbing. No point. No point. In the erstwhile ways of working, the process was very structured. Okay, who'll do this, who'll do this, who'll do this, and like I'll just take this as a simple example. This is coming from my experience in one of the teams that I was coaching. In the erstwhile ways of working, the same team, okay, there is a process of raising a support ticket to put the code in production. Now a big debate emerges as to who's going to do it. Would it be done by the developer, the tester, the lead, or the scrum master? It doesn't matter. So just focus on the customer value. It doesn't matter. I look at it this way. It doesn't matter who takes the ball across the line as long as the ball moves across the line. If that is the spirit with which all of us work, then then that's a very wonderful place to be in. Let's quickly look over the ceremonies. We spoke about the multitasking. It's a big, just imagine in the 15-minute stand up, if people are multitasking, I'm sure most of you would have observed this and experienced this. People are still busy on their laptops or their cell phones, and more so in this virtual world, we don't even know what the other person is doing on the other side. for that 15 minutes itself, if people are multitasking, then it's really pathetic. It's very counterproductive. And just imagine in the grooming meeting or the product backlog refinement meeting, if people are multitasking, then it's a gone case. Have we addressed the base? So then we don't have customer focus as team members. This was one a big thing in the previous ways of working. Risks, hiding risk. So here in the agile ways of working, we don't believe in hiding risk. The moment we start hiding, so previously I as a project manager, I prefer to hide the risk and somehow I try to manage internally, so on and so forth. But like as I mentioned, bad news doesn't get better with the time. So it's as simple as that. If that is what we are doing, then transparency and customer focus is under question. This is one more coming from the erstwhile ways of working. Some critical information is there and people don't want to share. I've just given an example, nothing particular about the product owner and things like that. So if there's one critical discussions that has happened with the stakeholders, let's say the release date has got moved from so and so date to so and so date. Now the product owner, in the erstwhile ways of working, I would generally want to hide. Okay, let everyone, if I share, they'll become relaxed. That was my thought process. No, that doesn't work. Then if that is the case, the transparency is missing. Bad news again. So we spoke about it's something similar to the risks that we have. So there's no, and when I say stakeholders, it's everyone. I would more so with the external stakeholders. If something is not working, share it. That's okay. Let's handle it head on. This is one more thing. Team members, do we actually and truly participate in the sizing of the story in our poker planning activity? So that is something that we need to, or do I just give a number to the story as a story point size for the namesake of it? If that is happening, my commitment to the whole exercise of planning or the whole exercise of sizing a story is missing. And there are quite a few anti-patterns out there which I can keep on going. Why what happens in the planning meeting, why trust is under question. There are quite a few things happen over there. This is something that some people have this behavior of not willing to share information. They want to retain their criticality in the project. They hesitate to share the knowledge. So if that's the case, team collaboration, transparency, it's missing. Retrospective, yeah. Over the period of time, the zeal and the steam of the retrospective meetings fizzle out. This is something that we'll have to safeguard against. Because if the retrospectives are not done right, then continuous improvement doesn't happen. Not respecting the schedule of the ceremonies, yeah, this is very often seen. Okay, even though the plannings, the reviews, the retros, the refinements, the stand-ups are set up upfront by the Scrum Master, but still people tend to sacrifice these critical ceremonies in the name of other meetings. It's a big no-no. If that is the case, the commitment and the focus of the people who are skipping these key ceremonies is certainly under a big question. Well, I'm done. So thank you for your time, and I would request you guys to get to this menti.com, use this code, and give your feedback. Now I'm available. So for any questions that are there.
There are a couple of questions. We'll start from the time of event it was occurred.
Sure.
So it was the first questions what I have is from J. Raj Vatta. When you talk about working agreement, does it need to be paper based and signed by all team members, or it can be based on the team's mutual agreement?
I think it is pretty much the same. So you answered your question. So it is not that we have to literally sign it. So working agreement, look at working agreement, something like this. At the start of the session, we had a working agreement. We'll take questions in between when we are pause, and we'll park the questions for which will take a longer explanation. That is a working agreement. So the working agreement, first and foremost, it is a agreement within the entire team, including the product owner and the scrum master and all the team members involved, as to how and you will work with each other.
Yeah,
And
kind
you
of a
can
mutual
involve your,
consent.
it's a mutual consent. And the most important thing is it's a living document. Please don't create it once and leave it for the rest of the time. Make it a point to bring it up in the retrospective meeting. Does our working agreement still stand good? Do we have to take out something and put in something else to improve continuously? That is how you should look at a working agreement. Yes, to answer to
All
your
right.
question,
Yeah.
everyone involved should be part of that working agreement, and it is to be continuously relooked and improved.
All right. We'll go to the next question. It was from VB India. There is a lot of buzzwords around mindset, system thinking, design thinking, business agility, mission agility. If possible, can you give us one linear definition if possible? I don't want to waste time of others participants. Thank you in advance.
This is a very big question, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, so probably we can park it
Yeah, probably we
for
can
the
have
last.
different webinars on this one. It may need half an
Yeah.
hour to 1 hour to
So
cover
business
that.
agility is one thing, and yeah. See, agile mindset is. I look at it this way. To be honest, I always look at whatever is in line with the values and principles is agile mindset, and what is not. If you ask me in one phrase, and yes, doing a lot of reading on all of these does really help.
Yeah,
We can
so
take up the
we'll
next
go
one.
into the next question. It's from YouTube, Raviv Singh. What are the major cause of agile failures and how many members required in a Scrum team? It's a two different question. The first is what are the major cause of agile failure?
I'll take the other one, which is
Okay,
faster. So
okay,
the Scrum Guide says 7 plus or minus 2. So not including the product owner and the Scrum Master. And there's a science behind it. The more the team members, the more the communication channels that are there. So yes, you require at least 3 to 4 to make a team. 2 doesn't make a team. 3 to 4, not more than 7 to or a 9. So that should be the ideal team size from a
all right.
numbers point of view. So that is one. Next is a major reasons for the agile transformation
I think
failure.
this question was asked when you actually started in to talk about all those patterns. So what I think what you already mentioned after this question came up.
Yeah, so probably I didn't touch upon the leadership part of it. So the biggest, as far as my experience goes, the biggest failure of agile transformation is the leadership's commitment, because the you can read about these whatever I'm just trying to tell, the team or the employees are already doing their best, but just because the leadership has got a different trait, the transformation start failing. So there's a beautiful case study wherein the Toyota took over Ford establishment and a loss-making Ford establishment in US, and with the same employees, but with the Toyota taking over the management, and so it was a success. So one of the biggest causes for any agile transformation is the leadership agility, which we, so whatever that I spoke is very much applicable for the leadership as well. So if you ask me one big ticket item, I would say leadership agility. If you want to give me a one phrase answer, I would say leadership agility.
All right. Okay. We'll go to the next question from YouTube. Ayub Kubal, who actually answered details of the emotional depth that we mentioned. He says, so in my question, I was talking about emotional depth as a result of lack of trust. When people feel they are not
uh,
heard and become stressed or maybe in conflictual situation, when the conflicts are not resolved soon, it will be difficult to solve them
very true,
later,
very
and
true.
yeah, and it will cost a lot of time and also money to remove it.
Very true, very true, very true. That is what is the Scrum Master's role is all about, because a Scrum Master has to learn a lot of new skill sets on the soft skills part of it. So, because it is a servant leadership skill, and conflict negotiation, conflict resolvement, negotiation, and all of these finer aspects have to be part of the Scrum Master's duty. So you are very true. Not addressing these aspects. So if all of us start looking at the processes, wearing the glasses of the values and principles, most of these would get eliminated slowly. And believe me, people there's only one odd people in the team, one odd person in the team who doesn't like these things. Those people either will change their behavior or they'll fall out. So either ways, it's a good for the team.
Right. Okay. We'll go to the next question from Siva, asking, picking phone is a task. Is picking phone is a task? I'm not sure which context it was asked about.
Maybe
Uh,
multitasking.
yes. So
Yeah,
I think when you mentioned multitasking, the picking phone, you given an example.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, see, it's as simple as that. If I'm a developer, I'm working on something in Trig logic. So I get a phone call, be it from my colleague itself on a particular problem, or it could be a personal phone call also. My thought process goes off, and for me to get into that frame of mind to the same logic that I was coding, it takes time. So yes, any disturbance which stops the flow of thought is a waste. Yes, it is easier said than done. I'm not telling that right away, but we have to make a conscious effort to avoid multitasking.
okay. So now we'll go to the next question. Where does that my question gone? Okay, it's from Balaganesh YouTube. How to deal with dev and test happening in different geographics as different teams? How can we improvise this?
That itself is a big anti-pattern. So what I understand is you have got a dev team, dev scrum team, and you got a testing scrum team. Then we have lost the game altogether, if that is what we are talking over here. So then it is we'll have to talk to the leadership. We'll have to have some hard conversations with the leadership. Does it really make sense to have a dev scrum team or a testing scrum team, irrespective of whether different geographic location or co-located also? So I would
Right.
take it a bit more further. Even in a co-located situation, if you have a dev scrum team and a testing scrum team, that itself is a big no-no. Forget this geographically
Right.
located.
Okay, next question, YouTube question from Fatma. How do you build in a culture of customer focus and customer experience in a Scrum team?
Very valid question. So I let me. It is for the product owner to do a lot of homework over here to set the right product vision. So I most of us probably would have heard this example in the various trainings or readings that we have done. So I give this example quite often. So there's one individual who's putting, so a person goes and asks that individual, what are you doing? He tells, I'm putting a brick over a brick. Okay, fine. He goes and talks to another person. He's telling, no, someone has told me that he's coming up with some building, but I don't know what building it is, but I'm putting a brick over a brick. The third person says, I know I'm building a Taj Mahal. So who do you think could be doing a good job? obviously the third person, because he has been he has been told the vision of the product and how does it change the life of the customer. So the product owner's role is very, very important to articulate the product vision and keep the entire team involved. The erstwhile ways of working is, okay, I'm a big man in an organization. Okay, I'll give it to only to my project manager on things, so that because my team member don't understand anything, so I don't even have to explain to them. No, that is not how the last person in the team should be really and clearly able to articulate whatever that I'm writing, one single code of line of code that I'm writing, whatever story that I'm developing, whatever functionality, how is it going to change the life of my customer? If we can do that, then this is what it is.
Okay, we'll go to the next question. It was from again Ravi, where I can correlate burn down and poker activities in Agile. I am a little confused on the question, but if you think that can be relatively
They're not.
compared.
They're not correlated. Poker activity and burn down. So probably he's talking of the story burn down chart or effort burn down chart. So that has got nothing to do with poker as
Right.
a way of sizing a story. So poker is just a way. Okay, we anonymously or we secretly vote a number, and then it's a platform for conversation to happen. So they are not related.
Yeah, next question from YouTube, Manilo Pattapat. Is it mandatory to use poker in estimation?
Not necessarily. See, that's why we'll have to, poker is used as a way of sizing a story. I always use the word sizing a story, lest it not be confused with estimating in hours. That's why I use the word sizing a story. We use poker to size a story so that we can honor these values. So I should be able to size a story without any bias, without any cognitive bias, without hippo effect. Hippo is highest paid person's opinion. Hippo effect.
Yeah.
I should be able to size this, and I'm accountable. I should be able to think the entire story end to end, and I have to give sizing. And we all know that we cannot, and why story points is a different topic altogether. Relative sizing, we are not getting into. I'm not getting into it. The whole idea of using poker is so that it gives that safety net for all of us to give a number in comparison to a wall of reference of the stories that we have, and then it's a platform for having open discussion. So openness, courage. So it is just a methodology. So it is it should be looked at it that way, and it is not the only way. So we can do t-shirt sizing, or we can do relative, any of the relative. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And we use Fibonacci series because one, two, they're spaced out evenly. As long as we can relatively size, that is a key concept. We should be able to relatively size.
Right. Okay. I think we have the last question from Ola. What is your advice on estimating bugs? Is it advisable to estimate bug tickets or not?
Is this the last one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my personal view is when there are two type of bugs. When I say one I call them as a field defect. The other one I call it as an in process bug, which is still not left our company, which is still not hit production. So so let me first deal with the field defects. Now field defect is something which is not supposed to be there in the first place itself. We as a team delivered some story. After delivering the story, we created this defect. and we create. So it's a in Hindi or our it's our karma, it's our sin that we have created it. I have already taken the credit of delivering that story in terms of story points. If I can use the word taking the credit, it's a 5-pointer story. I have delivered a 5-pointer story. Now I've created a field defect for it. Now I cannot take it up again and size it in a story point and take credit for that also. It doesn't seem logical to me. That is point number one. Point number two is story point sizing is all about relatively sizing with another story. Now, okay, from one story to another story, we can relatively size. I'm not getting into the concepts of relative sizing here, but how can I relatively size a defect? A defect is a defect, but how can I relatively size with another defect? Because an impact analysis might take 4 days, but fixing that defect could be 1 line of code. But another defect, impact analysis is very small. Fixing would take a long time. So there's no logical science to relatively size defects, defect A versus defect B. So that's why you can't size defects in terms of story points. Now
Yeah, I
coming to
think,
the
yeah, so very true. Yeah, coming to, I think you are done. Okay, continue, please. Sorry.
coming to the in process bugs. Now I told there are two. One is field defect, the other is in process. So whatever defect that my tester finds during the sprint, obviously that should not be sized. So the best way to handle it is just tap over the shoulder of the developer. Boss, can you fix it? I found this. If he has got the time, he fixes it then and there, or whenever he finds time. And if there's a possibility that my developer will forget or things like that, I use the tool to log a defect. It is only for the paperwork. So the focus is not on the paperwork. The focus is on me conveying. And there's elaborate, I've seen organization, there's elaborate process of logging a defect. Okay, give these steps, give that, give a screenshot, give a video, so on, rather than speak it out in the daily stand-up here. So the focus should be on the collaboration. So in process defects certainly should not be sized. However, any defect, if it has crossed the sprint boundary, means to say because of a defect, because of which our story was not accepted because of the definition of done that we have defined. And that defect should certainly be tracked. We should be, so that we can strengthen our in process procedures. Is our refinement right? Is our DOR strong enough? That should be the objective of in process bugs. I think I gave a holistic answer for whether we should size the defects in story points or not. Niladri,
Right.
you were trying to
Yeah.
add something.
No, I was not trying to add. I was just trying to mention there are a couple of feedback also we received in YouTube. Raviv Singh says, "Thank you for my question answered." In YouTube, Manilio says, "Thank you." And over here in the chat window, we got a message from Ola. Such an amazing session. Thank you to the speaker and organizer. And someone also mentioned, will this recording available to participant? I answered yes. Onkar Lambert says, thank you, Mr. Speaker and the organizer for this informative session. And Ola mentioned, thank you so much for that answer on the bugs. Yeah, I think that's all what we had. We know we actually extended 1 more hour kind of what we actually predicted.
Oh,
We
is it?
didn't, yeah,
Okay,
it's,
I didn't realize.
yeah. So it's actually, we have a pretty much informative, interactive session where we got lots of questions, answered them. And again, thank you all. You already know that there are a couple of other webinars we are having in upcoming few weeks. So I'll expect everyone stay tuned, join in those webinar, share your questions so that we'll also learn, you will also learn, and we'll have this mutual learning platform ongoing. Yeah, Mahendra, you want to add something at the
Thank you so
closer?
much. Thanks for all the questions, and thanks for your patience for hearing me out. And it was a learning experience for me as well. Every experience for me is a learning experience. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Great, then. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.